everyone, it's Sarah and welcome to my crochet channel. Now today's video I'm going to be showing you how to crochet the crossover cowl. Now I've gotten lots of requests for items for the guys for Christmas gifts, and this is a perfect gift for the guys. It also works great for the girls. It's made with a super bulky number 6 yarn. It whips up really quickly. You can add a button or not, and you can add a band or not. And I'll show you all of those things when we get a little farther on in the video. Now, this cowl measures approximately 6 inches wide, and it's 32 inches around. I'm also going to explain to you how to make that wider if you want it wider and longer if you want it longer. You can also make it shorter. It's completely versatile and super easy to adjust to any size cowl. Now you can find this free crochet pattern on my blog, and as always you can find that blog link down in the notes underneath this video. So what you're going to need to make our crossover cowl is some bulky number 6 yarn. Now I'm using the Wool Ease Thick and Quick from Lion brand today, and this color is called Urban Camo, and I just really loved it. I thought it was perfect for fall. It's got some rusts in it, a little bit of a teal, kind of golden, all mixed in, some blues with this sort of beige yarn, and it's really pretty, and it works really great with this pattern. You're going to need about 8 ounces of bulky number 6 yarn, and there are lots of different bulky number 6 yarns that you can use out there. It doesn't have to be a variegated, it can be a solid. You can also stripe it like you saw in those pictures at the beginning of the video. So you need about 8 ounces of a bulky number 6. I added a big wooden button. You can use 2, 3, or none if you want to. You can even leave this band off and not add a button at all. That's what's really great about this pattern, is you can change colors and you can change parts of it, make it longer, make it shorter, and make it for the person that you're making it for. Alright, so we're going to be stitching with our K hook. The K hook is a 6.50 millimeter crochet hook. Usually with a bulky 6 you don't use this small of a hook. I know a K hook seems big, but we usually use maybe a 9, and so 9 millimeter I mean. But I want the stitches to be a little more compact and the cowl to be a little more compact. If you want to make it just a little bit looser, you can always go up in your hook size. I prefer this one, 6.50 millimeter, which is your K hook. And you need to make sure that you have a needle that has a nice big eye on it so you can weave in your ends, but also you need to be able to get through those holes that you've chosen for your button. So keep that in mind. And then of course we just need our scissors. We're going to begin with our slip knot, and then we're going to chain 80 chains. Now if you want to do the pattern according to what I have written, 80 chains will get you a cowl that is approximately 32 inches around. If you want to add or subtract the length, you need to do that in increments of 4 chains. I'm doing my cowl according to the pattern, so I'm going to chain 80 chains. I've chained my 80 chains. I'm going to make sure that I don't twist my chain, and I usually just lay it out like this. We'll go in that first chain with a slip stitch, and chain 1. And now what we're going to do is we're going to stitch 1 single crochet in each of the chains around. So you go in, pull up a loop, yarn over, and go through both loops. 1 single crochet in each of those 80 chains around. Or if you've added and subtracted, of course, you'll have a different stitch count. But remember, you need to add or subtract in increments of 4 chains in order for the crossover pattern to work. All right, so I'm stitching 1 single crochet in each of the chains all the way around. I've stitched 1 single crochet in each of those chains, working all the way around, making sure I don't twist. We're going to join to the first single crochet with a slip stitch, and we're going to chain 3. And this is the row where we're going to do our crossover stitch. Now the crossover stitch pattern has also been called a mock cable because you get that line across. All right, so our chain 3 counts as our first. We're going to double crochet in the next 2 stitches, yarn over, go in, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through the first 2, yarn over, and go through the second 2. So our chain 3 counted as our first, and I stitched 2. Now we're going to wrap 2 wraps around our hook. We're going to cross back to that stitch before the first double crochet, yarn over, and pull through. We'll have 4 loops on our hook, yarn over, go through the first 2, yarn over, go through the second 2, yarn over, and go through the third 2. All right, let's turn it back over and look at it. There's our 3 double crochets, and there's our crossover. All right, now we're going to skip the next double crochet, and be sure and look at it because this stitch is stitched in this stitch. And so we want to skip the next one and stitch 1 double crochet in the next 3. 1, 2, 3. Now we're going to stitch that triple like we did here. So 2 wraps on our hook. We're going to cross back, and we're going to go from behind to the front of that stitch, yarn over, whoops, pull it through. We have those 4 loops on our stitch, or on our hook, not our stitch. Yarn over, go through the first 2, yarn over, go through the second 2, yarn over, and go through the third 2. And now we have 2 crossover stitches. And this is why you need to add or subtract in increments of 4, because we stitch 3 double crochets and a triple, and that's 4 stitches. All right, so again, we're going to skip the next stitch and stitch 1 double crochet in the next 3. I'm going to move that so you can see a little better. 1, 2, and 3. 2 wraps on our hook, and remember, don't wrap these too tight. Go back to that skipped stitch, go in, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through the first 2, yarn over, go through the second 2, yarn over, and go through the third 2 loops. All right, and now you can see how those crossover stitches are forming, and they look really cool. Skip the next, 1 double crochet in the next 3, triple in the skipped stitch, and repeat. And we'll continue to repeat this all the way around. skip the next, 1 double crochet in the next 3, and 2 wraps, and stitch that triple in that skipped stitch. And I do want to remind you, whoops, there we go. I tried to go the wrong direction. I do want to remind you to really look here, because you don't want to use this as your skipped stitch, because that last double crochet was in that stitch. So you're going to skip the next one and then start stitching your 3 double crochets. That's where your count can get off at times, and you don't want that to happen. All right, so 3 double crochets and triple in that skipped stitch going from the back to the front of that stitch. And we'll continue to repeat this, working all the way around our cowl. And then I'll show you how to join back when we get over here. I've completed all my crossover stitches, and if you chained 80, you're going to have 20 of those crossover stitches. When you get to your last set where you've done 3 double crochets and your triple, we need to join back where we started, okay? So what you're going to do is you're going to find that chain 3 where we started, and you're going to place a slip stitch in the corner of that. And then we'll go ahead and chain 1. All right, and that's the way that it should look after row 2. Aren't those crossover stitches beautiful? All right, so now for row 3, we're going to stitch 1 single crochet in each stitch around. And when you do a stitch like this and you're trying to put a row of stitches in it, it can be a little bit confusing. All right, so we're going to go right in that first stitch and stitch a single crochet. And the best way to make sure that you stay with your 80 count, or whatever count you're using, is to follow these rows of stitches across the top. All right, so that way you'll have your stitch count right. So we'll go into each set of those loops at the top and stitch 1 single crochet. And make sure when you get to the end of your row, when we're getting ready to join, that you count and make sure that you have the right amount. Because if you're off by 1 or 2 on this one, it will really throw off your crossover stitch rows. All right, so if you just be careful and follow along at the top and just watch and make sure you put 1 single crochet in each of those sets of loops there at the top, you won't get your count off. So we're stitching 1 single crochet in each of those stitches all the way around. I've completed that row of single crochet, stitching 1 single crochet in each stitch around, and again you need to have 80 single crochets. We're going to join to that first single crochet with a slip stitch and chain 3. So now what we're going to do is we're going to continue to repeat row 2 and row 3 for 6 more rows. You'll stitch the crossover row, then you'll stitch a single crochet row, and you'll repeat that up through row 9 or for 6 more rows. I've repeated those 2 rows 6 more times up through row 9. So you're going to have 4 rows of your crossover stitches, and then you'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows of your single crochet, because we started with our first row of single crochet and we want to end with a row of single crochet. And that's all you need to do to make the basic crossover cowl. All right, so I've already cut my yarn here and I've joined my chain 1. I'm going to get my needle with my big eye. Go ahead and tie that off. And then we're going to go in behind and weave this in underneath. When you're weaving in some thicker yarns, you always end up having a little bit blunter of a needle. And so you're going to have to be a little bit more careful going through those stitches and fibers because you want to make sure that's going to hold. And I just kind of go forward and I'll make a little loop and go back over. And then I'll kind of go over to the side and just kind of go back and forth, trying to go through the stitches and the fibers where possible. All right, so, and then I also went ahead and weaved in the other end where I started. So my ends are all weaved in and it's ready to be worn. But I want to add that little tab. And I'm going to show you how to make the button tab just for a little extra flair. I also wanted to say before I make that tab is that if you want your cowl to be taller, wider, you can continue to repeat these 2 rows until it's the width that you want. To make the button tab, you're going to start with a slip knot and then we're going to chain 21 chains. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21. All right, so I have 21 chains. I'm going to go in the second chain from the hook and stitch a single crochet, and then I'll stitch a single crochet in each of those stitches across. We won't be doing any crossover stitches in the button tab. It's all going to be single crochets. There we go. We started in the second chain from the hook, 1 single crochet in each chain, and because we chained 21, we're going to have 20 single crochets. We're going to chain 1 and turn. And what we're going to do for 5 more rows is just stitch 1 single crochet in each single crochet across, chain 1 and turn, so that we have a total of 6 rows of single crochets. I've stitched those 5 more rows, which gives me 6 rows of single crochet. I've cut my yarn and I've left myself quite a bit of yarn because we're going to put that together and stitch it closed, and then I just tied off. All right, so now let's put it on the scarf or cowl. All right, so I like to cover where I weaved in my ends just to make it a little bit neater. I'm going to go ahead and thread that tail of yarn onto my needle. I'm going to wrap this around. We'll turn it over. And I'm just going to stitch it together with my needle. Now, if you prefer, you can single crochet or slip stitch this together. I just thought since it's on the inside, I can whip stitch it real quick and make it nice and neat. I also wanted the option that if I decided I didn't like the tab, then I can just cut the yarn and take it off. I'm going to do one more stitch, make sure it's nice and secure. All right, so now I'm going to take these 2 ends and just tie them together. I cut my yarn. I'm going to leave this yarn on because I'm going to use this to sew my button on. Alright, so I'm going to turn this over. And there's the tab. And now I want to sew the button in place. I'm going to only sew it to the tab. That way, if I change my mind and I want to take the tab off, I won't affect the scarf. Okay, you can choose 1, 2, 3, or however many buttons that you want. The main thing is when you're sewing on your button, make sure you get in some of those stitches and not the holes so it stays securely. Now I know this is just a decorative button and it doesn't matter because it is going to get some wear and tear, but not like it would if it was going through a buttonhole. All right, there we go. You can do that as many times as you want. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut this a little bit just to get it out of the way. And then I'll go ahead and stitch my, or tie a knot in my button threads so that it's going to stay nice and secure. Alrighty, clip that off. And now I have a button tab on my cowl. So here is our completed crossover cowl. You can make it as long as you want. You can make it as wide as you want. You can make it with or without the button tab. And you can make it in any colors you desire. It's a very versatile and gorgeous cowl. This stitch gives it a lot of class and warmth.